7. An imperial capital Vijayanagara, c. 14th to 16th century. Vijayanagara, or city of victory, was the name of both a city and an empire. The empire was founded in the 14th century. In its heyday, it stretches from the river Krishna in the north to the extreme south of the peninsula. In 1565, the city was sacked and subsequently deserted, although it fell into ruin in the 17th or 18th centuries. It lived on in the memories of people living in the Krishna Tungabhadra Doab. They remembered it as Hampi, a name derived from that of the local mother goddess, Pampa Devi. These oral traditions combined with archaeological finds, monuments and inscriptions and other records helped scholars to rediscover the Vijayanagara Empire. A part of the stone wall that was built around the city of Vijayanagara. 1. The discovery of Hampi. The ruins and Hampi was brought to light in 1800 by an engineer and antiquary named Colonel Colin Mackenzie, an employee of the English East India Company. He prepared the first survey map of the site. Much of the initial information he received was based on the memories of priests of the Virupaksha temple and the shrine of Pampa Devi. Subsequently, from 1856, photographers began to record the monument, which enabled scholars to study them. As early as 1836, epigraphists began collecting several dozen inscriptions found at this and other temples at Hampi. In an effort to reconstruct the history of the city and the empire, historians collected information from these sources with accounts of foreign travelers and other literature written in Telugu, Kannada, Tamil, and Sanskrit. Colin Mackenzie, born 1754, Colin Mackenzie became famous as an engineer, surveyor, and cartographer. In 1815, he was appointed the first Surveyor General of India, a post he held till his death in 1821. He embarked on collecting local histories and surveying historic sites in order to better understand India's past and make governments of the colony easier. He says that it struggled long under the miseries of bad management before the South came under the bearing influence of the British government. By studying Vijayanagara, Mackenzie believed that the East India Company could gain much useful information on many of these institutions, laws and customs whose influence still prevails among the various tribes of native forming the general mass of the population to this day. Mackenzie and his assistant. This is a copy by an unknown artist of an oil painting by the portrait painter Thomas Hickey. It dates to c. 1825 and belongs to the collection of Royal Asiatic Society of Britain and Ireland. On Mackenzie's left in his peon, Kistaniji holding a telescope. On his right are Brahmana assistant, a Jalina Pandit right, and behind him the Telugu Brahmana cavalry, Bentak Lachmiya. How has the artist portrayed Mackenzie and his indigenous informers? What ideas about him and his informants are sought to be impressed upon the viewers? Comment this. 2. Rayas, Nayakas, and Sultans. According to tradition and epigraphic evidence, two brothers Harihara and Bukka founded the Vijayanagara Empire in 1336. His empire included within its fluctuating frontier people who spoke different languages and followed different religious traditions. On their northern frontier, the Vijayanagara's king competed with contemporary rulers including the sultans of the Deccan and the Gajapati rulers of Odisha. For control of the fertile river valley and the resource generated by lucrative overseas trade. At the same time, interaction between these states led to sharing of ideas, especially in the field of architecture. The rulers of Vijayanagara borrowed concept and building techniques, which they then developed further. Karnataka Samrajyam. While historians use the term Vijayanagara Empire, contemporaries describe it as the Karnataka Samrajyam. The Gopuram or gateway of the Brihadishvara temple at Thanjavur. Some of the areas that were incorporated within the empire had witnessed the development of power states such as those of the Cholas in Tamil Nadu and Hoysalas in Karnataka. Ruling elites in these areas had extended patronage to elaborate temples such as the Brihadisabhara temple at Thanjavur and the Chennakeshava temple at Belur. The rulers of Vijayanagara, who called themselves Rayas, built on this tradition and carried them, as we will see, literally to new heights. Elephant, horses, and men. Gajapati literally means Lord of Elephant. This was the name of a ruling lineage that was very powerful in Odisha in the 15th century. In the popular tradition of Vijayanagara, the Deccan Sultans are termed as Ashyapati or Lord of Horses, and Rayas are called Narapati of Lord of Men, Kings and Traders. Warfare during these times depended upon effective cavalry. The import of horses from Arabia and Central Asia was very important for rival kingdoms. This trade was initially controlled by Arab traders, local communities of merchants known as Kudirai Chattis or horse merchants. Also participated in these exchanges from 1498. Other factors appeared on the scene. These were the Portuguese who arrived on the west coast of the subcontinent and attempt to establish trading and military station. Their superior military technology, especially the use of musket, enabled them to become important player in the tangled politics of the period. In fact, Vijayanagara was also noted for its market dealing in spices, textile, and precious stones. Trade was often regarded as a status symbol for such cities, which boasted of a wealthy population that demanded high-value exotic goods, especially precious stones and jewelry. The revenue derived from trade in turn contributed significantly to the prosperity of the states. The apogee and decline of the empire. Within the polity, claimants to power included members of the ruling lineage as well as military commanders. The first dynasty known as the Sangama dynasty exercise control till 1485. They were supplanted by the Saluvus military commanders who remained in power till 1503, when they were replaced by the Tuluvas. Krishnadeva belonged to the Tuluva dynasty. Krishnadevaraya's rule was characterized by expansion and consolidation. This was the time when the land between the Tungabhadra and Krishna rivers, the Raichur Doab, was acquired 1512. The rulers of Odisha were subdued 1514, and severe defeats were inflicted on the Sultan of Bijapur 1520, although the kingdom remained in a constant state of military permanence. It flourished under conditions of unparalleled peace and prosperity. Krishnadeva Raya is credited with building some fine temples and adding impressive gopurams to many important South Indian temples. He also founded a suburban township near Vijayanagara called Nagalapuram after his mother. Some of the most detailed descriptions of Vijayanagara come from his time or just after. Kings and traders. Krishnadeva Raya ruled 1509 to 29. The most famous ruler of Vijayanagara composed a work on statecraft in Telugu known as the Amuktamalaya. About traders he wrote, a king should improve the harbors of his country and so encourage its commerce that horses, elephants, precious gems, sandalwood, pearls, and other articles are freely imported. He should arrange that the foreign sellers who land in his country on account of storm illness and enthusiasm are looked after in a suitable manner. Make the merchants of distant foreign countries who import elephants and good horses be attached to yourself by providing them with daily audience, present and allowing decent profits, then those articles will never go to your enemies. Why do you think the king was interested in encouraging trade? Which group of people would have benefited from these transactions? Comment this. A strain began to show within the imperial structure following Krishnadeva Raya's death in 1529. His successors were troubled by rebellious Nayakas or military chiefs. By 1542, control as a center had shifted to another ruling lineage, that of Aravidu, which remained in power till the end of the 17th century. During this period, as indeed earlier, the military ambitions of the rulers of Vijayanagara as well as those of the Deccan sultanates resulted in shifting alignments. Eventually, this led to an alliance of the sultanates against Vijayanagara in 1565. Ramaraya, the the chief minister of Vijayanagara, led the army into battle at Raksasi Tangadi, also known as Talikota, where his forces were routed by the combined armies of Bijapur, Ahmed Nagar, and Golconda. The victorious army sacked the city of Vijayanagara. The city was totally abandoned within a few years. Now the focus of the empire shifted to the east, where the Aravidu dynasty ruled from Penukonda and the latter from Chandragiri near Tirupati. Map 1, South India, 14th to 18th century. Bidar, Wrangle, Golconda, Gulbarga, Bijapur, Krishna, Bhima, Tungabhadra, Hyderabad, Musalipattanam, Vijayanagara, Goa, Ikkadi, Bhatkal, Basrur, Bachirur, Chitradurga, Pennar, Bay of Bengal, Mylapore, Kachipuram, Chandragiri, Kelar, Mysore, Mangalore, Arabian Sea, Kannanur, Calicut, Kaveri, Gingi, Chidambaram, Thanjavur, Madurai, Baigal, Ramanathapuram, Tirunelveli, Kulian, Cochin, Indian Ocean, Sri Lanka. Identify the present-day states that form part of the empire. Comment this. Although the armies of the sultanates were responsible for the destruction of the city, Vijayanagara relations between the sultans and the riots were not always or inevitably hostile. In spite of religious differences, Krishnadeva Raya, for example, supported some claimant to power in the sultanates and took pride in the title establisher of the Javana kingdom. Similarly, the Sultan of Bijapur intervened to resolve succession dispute in Vijayanagara following the death of Krishnadeva Raya. In fact, that Vijayanagara kings were kept keen to ensure the stability of the Sultanate and vice versa. It was the adventurous policy of Ramaraya who tried to play off and Sultan against another that led the sultans to combine together and decisively defeat him. Javana, in a Sanskrit word used for the Greeks and other people who entered the subcontinent from the northwest. The Rayas and the Nayakas. Among those who exercised power in the empire were military chiefs who usually controlled forts and had armed supporters. These chiefs often moved from one area to another and in many cases were accompanied by peasants looking for fertile land on which to settle. These chiefs were known as Nayakas and they usually spoke Telugu or Kannada. Many Nayakas submitted to the authority of the kings of Vijayanagara, but they often rebelled and had to be subdued by military action. The Amara Nayaka system was a major political innovation of the Vijayanagara Empire. It is likely that many features of this system was derived from the Ikta system of the Delhi Sultanates. The Amara Nayakas were military commanders who were given territories to govern by the Raya. They collected tax and other dues from peasant craftspersons and traders in the area. They retained part of the revenue for personal use and for maintaining a stipulated contingent of horses and elephants. This contingent provides the Vijayanagara kings with an effective fighting force with which they brought the entire southern peninsula under their control. Some of the revenue was also used for the maintenance of temples and irrigation works. The Amara Nayakas sent tribute to the king annually and personally appeared in the royal court with gifts to express their loyalty. Kings occasionally asserted their control over them by transferring them from one place to another. However, during the course of the 17th century, many of these Nayakas established independent kingdoms. This hastened the collapse of the central imperial structures. Amara is believed to be derived from the Sanskrit word samara, meaning battle or war. It also resembles the Persian term amir, meaning a high noble. Discuss, locate Chandragiri, Madurai, Ikkeri, Thanjavur and Mysore, all centers of Nayaka power on map 1. Discuss the ways in which rivers and hills may have facilitated or hindered communication with Vijayanagara in each case. Comment this. Through Vijayanagara, the capital and its environs. Like most capitals, Vijayanagara was characterized by a distinctive physical layout and building style. Plan of Vijayanagara. Sacred Center, Hampi, Anegodi, Tungabhadra, Urban Core, Royal Center, Identify three major zones on the plan. Look at the central part. Can you see channel connecting up with the rivers? So, see how many fortification walls you can trace. Was the sacred center fortified? Comment this. Finding out about the city, a large number of inscriptions of the kings of Vijayanagara and their Nayakas recording donations to temple as well as describing important events have been recovered. Several travelers visited the city and wrote about it. Notable among their accounts are those of an Italian trader named Niccolo de Conti, an ambassador named Abdul Rajak sent by the ruler of Persia, a merchant named Anthony Nikitin from Russia, all of whom visited the city in the 15th century, and those of Duarte Barbosa, Domingo Pais, and Fernão Nunes from the Portugal, who came in the 16th century. A sprawling city. This is an excerpt from Domingo Pais' descriptions of the Vijayanagara, the size of the city. I do not write here because it cannot all be seen from any one spot, but I climbed a hill whence I could see a great part of it. I could not see it all because it lies between several ranges of hill. What I saw from thence seemed to me as large as Rome and very beautiful to the sight. There are many groups of trees within in the gardens of the house and many conduits of water which flows into the midst of it, and in places there are lakes. And the king has close to his place a palm grove and other rich fruit bearing trees. Would you find these features in a city today? Why do you think the gardens and water bodies were selected for special mention by Pies? Comment this. Water resources. The most striking feature about the location of the Vijayanagara in the natural basin formed by the river Tungabhadra, which flows in the northeasterly direction. The surrounding landscape is characterized by stunning granite hills that seem to form a girdle around the city. A number of streams flow down to the river from these rocky outcrops. In almost all cases, embankments were built along these streams to create reservoirs of varying sizes, as this is one of the most arid zones of the peninsula. Elaborate arrangements had to be made to store rainwater and conduct it to the city. The most important such tank was built in the early years of the 15th century and is now called Kamalapuram Tank. Water from this tank not only irrigated fields nearby but was also conducted through a channel to the royal center. One of the most prominent waterworks to be seen among the ruins in the Hiria Canal. This canal drew water from a dam across the Tungabhadra and irrigated the cultivated valley that separated the sacred center from the urban core. This was apparently built by kings of the Sangama dynasty. How tanks were built? About a tank constructed by Krishnadeva Raya, Pais wrote, the king make a tank at the mouth of two hills so that all the water which comes from the either one side or the other side collected there, and beside this water comes to it from more than 3 lakes, approximately 15 kilometers, by pipes which run along the lower parts of the range of outside. This water is brought from a lake which itself overflows into a little river. The tank has three large pillars handsomely carved with figures. These connect above the certain pipe by which they get water when they have to irrigate their gardens and rice field. In order to make this tank, the said king broke down a hill. In the tank I saw so many people at work that there must have been 15 or 20,000 men and looking like ants. Fortification and roads. Before we examine the different parts of the city in detail, let us look at what enclosed them all. The Great Fortress Wall. Abdul Razzaq, an ambassador sent by the ruler of Persia to Calicut, present-day Kozhikode. In the 15th century, was greatly impressed by the fortification and mentioned 7 lines of forts. This encircled not only the city but also its agricultural hinterland and forest. The outermost wall linked the hills surrounding the city, and massive masonry construction was slightly tapered. No mortar or cementing agent was employed anywhere in the construction. The stone blocks were wedge-shaped, which held them in place, and the inner portion of the wall was of the earth packed with rubble. Square or rectangular basins projects outwards. What was most significant about this fortification is that it enclosed agricultural tracts. Abdul Razzaq noted that between the first, second, and the third walls there were cultivated fields, gardens, and houses, and peace observed from the first circuit until an aqueduct leading into the royal center. Into the city there is a great distance in which our field, in which they sow rice and have many gardens and much water, in which water comes from 2 lakes. These statements have been corroborated by present-day archaeologists who have also found evidence of an agricultural tract between the sacred center and the urban core. This tract was serviced by an elaborate canal system drawing water from the Tungabhadra. A gateway in the fortification wall. Why do you think agricultural tracts were incorporated within the fortified area? Often the objective of medieval siege was to starve the defender into submission. These stages could last for several months and sometimes even years. Normally, rulers tried to be prepared for such situations by building large granaries within fortified areas. The rulers of Vijayanagara adopted a more expensive, elaborate strategy of protecting the agricultural belt itself. Describe the similarities and differences between these two entrances. Why do you think the ruler of Vijayanagara adopted elements of Indo-Islamic architecture? Comment this. A second line of fortification went round the inner core of the urban complex, and a third line surrounded the royal center, within which each set of major buildings was surrounded by its own high walls. The fort was then turned through well-guarded gates which linked the city to the major roads. Gateway were distinctive architectural feature that often define the structure to which they are regulated access. The arc on the gateway leading into the fortified settlement, as well as the dome over the gate, are regarded as typical feature of the architecture introduced by the Turkish sultans. Art historians refer to this style as Indo-Islamic. Art historians refer to this style as Indo-Islamic as it grew continually through interaction with local building practices in different regions. Archaeologists have studied roads within the city and those leading out from it. These have been identified by tracing paths through gateway as well as by find of pavement. Road generally wound around through the valley, avoiding rocky terrain. Some of the most important roads extended from the temple gateways and were lined by badgers. A Gapuram. The urban core. Moving along the road leading into the urban core, there is relatively little archaeological evidence of the houses of ordinary people. Archaeologists have found fine Chinese porcelain in some areas, including in the northeastern corner of the urban core, and suggests that these areas may have been occupied by rich traders. This was also the Muslim residential quarter, tomb and mosques located here have distinctive functions, yet their architecture resembles that of the mandapas found in the temples of Hampi. Plans of an excavated pavement. This is how the 16th century Portuguese traveler Barbosa described the houses of ordinary people which have not survived. The other houses of the people are thatched but nonetheless well built and arranged according to occupation in long street with many open places. Field survey indicated that the entire area was dotted with numerous shrines and small temples, pointing to the prevalence of a variety of cults, perhaps supported by different communities. The surveys also indicate that wells, rainwater tanks, as well as temple tanks may have served as source of water to the ordinary town dwellers. Shards of Chinese porcelain. What kinds of vessels do you think these shards were originally parts of? Comment this. A mosque in Vijayanagara. Does the mosque have the typical features of Indo-Islamic architecture? Comment this. Discuss. Compare the layout of Vijayanagara with that of your town or village. Comment this. For the Royal Center. The Royal Center was located in the southwestern part of settlement, although designated as a royal center, it included over 60 temples. Clearly, the patronage of temple and cult was important for rulers who were trying to establish and legitimize their authority through association with the divinities' houses in the shrine. About 30 building complexes have been identified at places. These are relatively large structures that do not seem to have been associated with ritual function. One difference between these structures and temples is that the latter were constructed entirely of masonry, while the superstructure of the secular buildings was built of perishable materials. A house of victory. This is what Fives had to say about the audience hall and the Mahanavami Dibba, which together he called the House of Victory. These buildings have two platforms, one above the other, beautifully sculpted. On the upper platform in the House of Victory, the king has a room made of cloth, where the idol has a shrine, and in the other, in the middle, in place a dais on which stands the throne of state, the crown, and the royal anklet. The Mahanavami Dibba. Some of the more distinctive structures in the area have been assigned name based on the form of the building as well as their function. The King's Place is the largest of the enclosure but has not yielded definitive evidence of being a royal residence. It has two of most impressive platforms, usually called the audience hall and the Mahanavami Dibba. The entire complex is surrounded by a high double wall with a street running between them. The audience hall is the high platform with slots for wooden pillars at close and regular intervals. It had a staircase going up to the second floor which rested on the pillars. The pillars being closely spaced would have left little free space, and thus it is not clear what the hall was used for. Located on one of the highest points in the city, the Mahanabami Dibba is a massive platform rising from a base of about 11,000 square feet to a height of the 40 feet. There is evidence that it is supported a wooden structure. The base of the platform is covered with relief carvings The Mahanavami Dibba, ritual associated with the structure probably consider the Mahanavami literally the great ninth day of the 10th-day Hindu festival during the autumn month of September and October, known variously as Dasera. Northern India, Durga Puja in Bengal. Carving on the Mahanavami Dibba. Can you identify the theme of the carving? Comment this. An elevation drawing of the Lotus Mahal. An elevation is the vertical view of any object of structure it gives you an idea of features that cannot be seen in a photograph. Notice the arches. These were probably inspired by Indo-Islamic techniques. Compare figure 713 and 715 and make a list of the features that are common to both as well as those that can be seen in only one. Also, compare the arch in figure 714 with the arch in figure 7.6, the Lotus Mahal and 9 towers, a high central one and 8 along the sides. How many can you see in the photograph and how many in the elevation? If you had to rename the Lotus Mahal, what would you call it? Comment this. And Navaratri or Mahanavami in peninsular India. The Vijayanagara kings displayed their prestige, power and suzerainty on the occasions. The ceremonies performed on the occasion included worship of the image, worship of the state horse, and the sacrifice of buffaloes and other animals, dances, wrestling matches, and procession of caparisons, horses, elephant and chariots, and soldiers, as well as ritual presentation before the king and his guests by the chief Nayakas and subordinate kings, marked the occasion. These ceremonies were imbued with deep symbolic meaning. On the last day of the festival, the king inspected his army and the armies of the Nayakas in a grand ceremony in an open field. On the occasion, the Nayakas brought the rich gifts for the king as well as the stipulated tribe. Was the Mahanavami Dibba that stands today at the center of the elaborate ritual. Scholars have pointed out that the space surrounding the structures does not seem to have been adequate for elaborate processions of armed men, women, and large number of animals like some of the other structures in the royal center. It remains an enigma. Details of an arch of the Lotus Mahal. Other buildings in the royal center. One of the most beautiful buildings in the royal center is the Lotus Mahal, so named by British traveler in the 19th century. While the name is certainly romantic, historian, and not quite sure what the building was used for, one suggestion found in a map drawn by Mackenzie is that it may have been a council chamber, a place where the king met his advisors. A photograph of the Lotus Mahal. Compare figure 716B with 717, making a list of features visible in each one. Do you think these were actually elephant stables? Comment this. While most temples were located in the sacred center, there were several in the royal centers as well. Elevation of the elephant stables. Plan of the elephant stables. A plan gives a horizontal view of the structure. Elephant stables located close to the Lotus Mahal. Sculpture from the Hazara Rama temple. Can you identify scenes of dancing? Why do you think elephants and horses was depicted on the panels? Comment this. One of the most spectacular of these is one known as the Hajaram Temple. This was probably meant to be used only by the king and his family. The images in the central shrine are missing. However, a sculpted panel on the wall survived. This includes scenes from the Ramayana sculpted on the inner walls of shrine. While many of the structures at Vijayanagara were destroyed when the city was sacked, tradition of building palatial structures are continued by the Nayakas. Many of these buildings have survived. Interior of the audience hall at Madurai. Note the arches. Discuss why did the Nayakas continue with the building tradition of the ruler of Vijayanagara? Comment this. 5. The sacred center. The choosing as capital. We now move to the rocky northern end of the city on the bank of the Tungabhadra. According to local tradition, this hill sheltered the monkey kingdom of Bali and Sugriva. Mentioned in the Ramayana, other traditions suggest that Pampa Devi, the local mother goddess, did penance in these hills in order to marry Virupaksha, the guardian deity of the kingdom, also recognized as a form of Shiva. To this day, this marriage is celebrated annually in the Virupaksha temple. Among these hills are found Jaina temples of the pre-Vijayanagara period as well. In other words, this area was associated with several sacred traditions. Temple building in the region had a long history, going back to dynasties such as the Pallavas, Chalukyas, Hoysalas, and Cholas. Rulers very often encouraged temple building as a means of associating themselves with the divine. Often, the deity was explicitly or implicitly identified with the kings. Temples also function as center of learning. Besides rulers and others as center of learning. Besides rulers and others often granted land and other resources of the maintenance of temples. Consequently, temples developed as significant religious, social, cultural, economic centers. From the point of view of the ruler, constructing, repairing, and maintaining temple were important means of winning support and recognition of their power, wealth, and piety. It is likely that the very choice of the site of Vijayanagara was inspired by the existence of the shrines of Virupaksha and Pampadevi. In fact, the Vijayanagara kings claimed to rule on behalf of the god of Virupaksha. All royal orders are signed Sri Virupaksha, usually in the Kannada script. Ruler also indicated their close links with the gods by using the title Suratra. Hindu Suratrana. This was a Sanskritization of the Arabic term Sultan, meaning king, so it literally meant Hindu Sultan. Even as they drew on earlier tradition, the ruler of Vijayanagara innovated and developed this. Royal portrait sculpture was now displayed in temple, and the king's visit to temple were treated as important state occasion on which he was accompanied by the important Nayakas of the empire. An aerial view of the Virupaksha temple, Gopurams and Mandapas. In terms of temple architecture by this period, certain new features were the evidence. This included structures of immense scales that must have been a mark of imperial authorities best amplified by the Raya Gopuram, figure 7.7, or royal gateways that often dropped the towers of the central shrine and signaled the presence of the temple from a great. A plan of the Virupaksha temple, most of the square structures are shrines. The two major gateways are shaded in black. Each tiny dot represents a pillar. Rows of pillars arranged in line within a square or rectangular frame appears to demarcate major halls, pavilions and corridors. Tank, shrine. Using the scale in the plan, measure the distance from the main gopuram to the central shrine. What would have been the easiest access from the tank to shrine? Comment this. A Kallana Mandapa meant to celebrate divine wedding. A line drawing of a sculpted pillar. Describe what you see on the pillar. Comment this. Distance. They were also probably meant as reminders of the power of kings able to command the resource, techniques, and skill needed to construct these towering gateways. Other distinctive features, including mandapas or pavilions and long pillared corridors that often ran around the shrines within the temple complex. Let us look at two temples more closely, the Virupaksha temple and the Vithala temple. The Virupaksha temples was built over centuries, while inscriptions suggest that the earliest shrines dated to the 9th-10th centuries. It was subsequently substantially enlarged with the establishment of the Vijayanagara Empire. The hall in front of the main shrines was built by Krishnadeva Raya to mark his accession. This was decorated with delicately carved pillar. He is also credited with the construction of the eastern Gopuram. This addition meant that the central shrine came to occupy a relatively small part of the complex. The halls in the temple were used for a variety of purposes. Some were spaces in which the images of the gods were placed to witness a special program of music, dance, drama, etc. Others were used to celebrate the marriage of deities, and yet others were meant of the deities to swing in. Special images distinct from those kept in the small central shrine were used on these occasions. The chariot of the Vithala temple. Do you think chariots would have actually been built like this? Comment this. Swing pavilion from Gingi. Another shrine, the Vithala temple, is also interesting. Here the principal deity was Vithala, a from the Vishnu, general lordship in Maharashtra. The introduction of the worship of the deity in Karnataka is another indication of the ways in which the rulers of Vijayanagara drew on different traditions to create an imperial culture. As in the case of other temples, this temple too has several halls and a unique shrine designed as a chariot. A characteristic feature of the temple complexes is the chariot seats that extended from the temple gopuram in a straight line. The streets are paved with stone slabs and lined with pillared pavilions in which merchants set up their shops. Just as the Nayakas continued with an elaborate on tradition of fortification, so they did with tradition of temple building. In fact, some of the most spectacular gopurams were also built by the local Nayakas. A gopuram built by the Nayakas of Madurai. Discuss how and why did the rulers of Vijayanagara adopt earlier tradition of ritual architecture. Comment this. So exploiting places, temples and badgers. We have been examining a wealth of information on Vijayanagara photographs, plans, elevations of structure and sculpture. How was all this produced? After the initial survey by Mackenzie, Information was pieced together from travelers' accounts and inscriptions. Through the 20th century, the site was preserved by the Archaeological Survey of India and the Karnataka Department of the Archaeology and Museum. In 1976, Hampi was recognized as a site of national importance. Then, in the early 1980s, an important project was launched to document the material remains as Vijayanagara in details through extensive and intensive survey using a variety of recording techniques over nearly 20 years. Dozens of scholars from all over the world work to compile and preserve this information. Let us look at just one part of this enormous exercise, mapping in more detail. The first step was to divide the entire area into a set of 25 squares, each designated by a letter of the alphabet. Then each of the small squares was subdivided into a set of even smaller squares. But this was not all. Each of these smaller squares was further subdivided into yet smaller units. As you can see, this detailed survey have been extremely painstaking and have recovered and documented traces of thousands of structures, from tiny shrines and residences to elaborate temples. They have also led to the recovery of traces of roads, paths, and badgers, etc. A detailed map of the site, top right. Gangavati, Adarandi, Hampi, Kandirapumba, Komalupuram, Nagandali, Anantasatarangudi, Hospet, which is the letter of the alphabet that was not used using the scale in the map. Measure the length of any one of the small squares. Comment this. Square n of figure 7.27 right. What is the scale used on this map? Comment this. Square nm of figure 7.28. Identify a temple. Look for walls, a central sign, and traces of paths leading to the temple. Name the squares on the map which contain the plan of the temple. The latter have been located through find the pillar bases and platform, all that remain. Of thriving markets, it is worth remembering something that John M. Fritz, George Mitchell, M.S. Nagaraja Rao, who worked for years at the site, wrote in our study of these monuments of Vijayanagara. We have to imagine a whole series of vanished wooden elements, columns, brackets, beams, ceilings, overhanging eaves, and towers decorated with plaster and painted perhaps brightly. Although wooden structures are lost and only stone structures survive, the description led by travelers allow us to reconstruct some aspect of the vibrant life of their times. Plan of the temple, figure 7.29. Identify the Gopuram halls, colonnades and central sign. Which areas would you pass through to reach the central shrine from the outer entrance? Comment this. The badger. Pies gives a vivid description of the badger. Going forward, they have a broad and beautiful street. In the street lay many merchants, and there you will find all sorts of rubies and diamonds and emeralds and pearls and seed pearls and clothes and every other sort of things there on earth and that you may wish to buy. Then you have there every evening a fair where they sell many common horses and nuts, and also many citrons and limes and oranges and grapes and every other kinds of garden stuff and wood you have all in this street. More generally, he described the city as being the best provided city in the world, with the market stocked with provisions such as rice, wheat, grains, India corns, and a certain amount of barley and beans, milk, pulses, and horse crumb, all of which was cheaply and abundantly available. According to Farao Nunez, the Vijayanagara market were overflowing with abundance of fruits, grapes and orange, limes, uh, pomegranates, jackfruit and mangoes, and all very cheap. Meat too was sold in abundance in the marketplace. Nunez described mutton, pork, venison, partridge, hares, doves, quail, and all kinds of birds, sparrow, rats, and cat, lizard as being sold in the market of Vishnaga, Vijayanagara. 7. Questions in search of answer. Buildings that survived tell us about the way spaces were organized and used, how they were built, with what material and technique. For example, we can access the defense requirement and military preparedness of the city by studying its fortification. Building also tells us about the spreads of ideas and cultural influences. If we compare them with buildings in other places, they convey ideas which the buildings of their patrons we wish to project. They are often suffused with symbols which are a product of their cultural context. This we can understand when we combine information from other sources like literature, inscription, and popular tradition. Krishnadeva the to recapitulate about some of the problem of perspective looks at this beautiful statue of Krishnadeva placed on the Gopuram of the temple at Chidambaram, Tamil Nadu. This is obviously the way in which the ruler wanted to project himself, and this is how Paz described the king: of medium height and of fair complexion and good figure, rather fat than thin. He has on his face signs of smallpox. Investigations of architectural feature do not tell us what ordinary men, women, and children, comprising the vast majority of the people who lived in the city and its outskirts, thought about these impressive buildings. Would they have had access to any of the areas within the royal center or the sacred center? Would they hurry past the sculpture, or would they pause to see, reflect, and try and understand its complicated symbolism? And where did the people who worked on this colossal construction project think of the enterprises to which they had contributed their labor? While rulers took all important decisions about the buildings to be constructed inside, the material to be used, and the style to be forwarded, who possessed the specialized knowledge required for such enormous enterprises, who drew up the plans for the buildings, where did the masons, stonecutters, sculpture, who did the actual building come from? Were they captured during war from neighboring regions? What kind of wages did they get? Who supervised the building activity? How was building material transported and where did it come from? Answered by merely looking at the building or their remains. Continuing research using other sources might provide some further clues. Part of a structure known as the Queen's Bath. Timeline 1. Major political developments. See, 1200 to 1300. Establishment of the Delhi Sultanate, 1206. 1300 to 1400, establishment of the Vijayanagara Empire. 1336, establishment of the Bahmani Kingdom. 1347, sultanates in Jaunpur, Kashmir and Madura. C. 1400 to 1500, establishment of the Gajapati Kingdom of Odisha. 1435, establishment of the Sultanates of Gujarat and Malwa. Emergence of the Sultanates of Ahmednagar, Bijapur and Bedar. 1419. C. 1500 to 1600, conquest of Goa by the Portuguese. 1510, collapse of the Bahmani Kingdom. Emergence of the Sultanate of Golconda. 1518, establishment of the Mughal Empire by Babur. 1526, question marks indicate uncertain date. Timeline 2, landmarks in the discovery and the conservation of Vijayanagara. 1800, Colin Mackenzie visit Vijayanagara. 1856, Alexander Greenlaw takes the first detailed photograph of archaeological remains at Hampi. 1876, J.F. Fleet begins documenting the inscription on the temple walls at the site. 1902, conservation begins under John Marshall. 1986, Hampi declared a World Heritage Site by UNESCO. Answer in 100 to 150 words. Comment this. Write a short essay about 250 to 300 words on the following. Comment this. Map work. On an outline map of the world, mark approximately Italy, Portugal, Iran, Russia. Trace the route the traveler mentioned on page 176 would have taken to reach Vijayanagara. Cover this. Project, choose one. Find out more about any one of the major cities which flourished in the subcontinent during the 14th, 17th century. Describe the architecture of the city. Are there any features to suggest that these were political centers? Are there buildings that were ritually significant? Is there an area of commercial activities? What are the features of distinguish the urban layout from that of surrounding areas? Comment this. Visit a religious building in your neighborhood. Describe with sketches its roof, pillar, and arches, if any, corridor, passage, hall, entrance, water supply, etc. Compare this feature with those of the Virupaksha temple. Describe what each part of the building is used for. Find out about his history. Comment this.